Russians are to handle manure with care now. It's pretty unbelievable, I know. Russian official admitting the country has millions of prostitutes. But who are they? A new threat for the country. This time, it's Russian children under fire. Fewer Russians buy fast food now, but they pay outrageously more. Another hidden tax is introduced in Russia. The state not only sends children to work, it creates professions for children now. Russian officials speaks the truth for a change. Chicken eggs are now transported in planes carry on. And the biggest news of the week, Russian senator is outraged by Russians valuing their lives. He, along with Russian state, has different plans for people's lives. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to another crazy Friday Russian news update. There have been so many crazy news this week that, I've had to leave quite a few out. Otherwise, this video would be too long. My name is Konstantin, and welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Fridays. I give you crazy news update straight out of the mad circus that Russia has become. But first things first. There's no such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia now. Don't forget about that. Before I start with the news, as usual, there is a joke in the beginning. Reporters come to Putin and ask him, Vladimir Vladimirovich, what's your hobby? Oh, I collect jokes about myself, he answers. Did you manage to collect a lot? 2.5 gulag camps so far. And the news, I call them crazy news from Russia, but lately they've outgrown the word crazy. I don't even know how to call them anymore. But let's jump straight to news number one. See for yourself. And let me start with funny news. Well, amusing news. Well, not tragic news. It's about crap. Oh, I know. It can be said of most news coming out of Russia these days. Either off crap or oh crap. But this news is actually of manure. Starting May 2nd, couple days ago, Russians can be fined for improper handling of manure. A fine up to 600,000 rubles, that's about $7,000, was imposed for non-compliance with the requirements for handling animal byproducts. The relevant law was signed by President Vladimir Putin, and a document was published in the media, so it became official. Now, a fine will be imposed for non-compliance with the requirements for storage, transportation, processing, and sale of manure. For government officials, the fine will amount to from 30 to 40,000 rubles. That's $4 to $500 for individual entrepreneurs, sole proprietors. The fine is from 50 to 60,000 rubles, and for companies from 250,000 to 350,000 rubles. That's $4,000 roughly. For repeated violation of this law, the fine will be higher. For government officials, from 40 to 50,000 rubles, does not change. No wonder, because that's the government officials. For entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, from 60 to 70,000 rubles, and for companies from 350 to 450,000 rubles. Well, I said this news is funny. On the other thought, there's not much fun in it. this is a small piece of a larger puzzle, big puzzle. And it's showing us that the final stage of the war that Russian government is waging against its citizens is here. It is underway. Thousands of dollars for mishandling manure. Crap! No pun intended. Another news, an educational news, comes from Russian Federal Police. You know, those good fellows at the Russian Federal Police once in a while release interesting information that I tend to believe. Only once in a while. Like this information now. Are you ready? Get this. More than 16 million Russians are involved in prostitution, said a member of the Public Council at the Ministry of Internal Affairs. That's how the federal police is called in Russia. Mr. Yuri Sharkovich. 60 million people. I quote, more than 60 million citizens of Russian Federation are already involved in the business of sex industry, I unquote. According to Sharkovich, Russia should ban propaganda of prostitution and pornography, propaganda and advertisement, since it is through sex industry that people are recruited into terrorism. Yes, through prostitution, people are recruited into terrorism. So, to ban propaganda on terrorism, or to ban propaganda advertisement on prostitution, oh, it's complicated, you know. Them good Russian officials. Hot today. Well, now, this news is very odd for a few reasons. First, there's legal punishment in Russia for advertising prostitution. It is an offense punished by a hefty fine. For example, in St. Petersburg, the fines are regulated from city to city and region to region. So in St. Petersburg, the fine is up to 500,000 rubles. That's an equivalent of $6,000. But organizing prostitution is already a criminal offense, and it's punished by up to 5 years in Russian prison. Now, don't you find it odd that one of the top officials of the federal police, a member of the public council supervising the federal police, doesn't know Russian laws? He wants to ban what's already have been made illegal. You know what? I'm taking my words back. There is nothing, absolutely nothing strange about this guy, what this guy said. On the contrary, it is expected of him and of other high-ranked government officials not to have a clue what they talk about. So it's not odd, but it's rather normal. But what is also not odd is that Sharkovich says that it is through sex industry that people are recruited into terrorism. I can't put two and two together here, you know. To me, there's no link. People are not recruited into terrorism through pornography, through prostitution. It's just completely different things. It doesn't make any sense. But again, it's not odd that Russian government officials talk illogical bullcrap. It's kind of expected. But what's really odd here is the number. 16 million Russians, both men and women, are involved into prostitution. Folks, I have not heard this before. This is a very serious stuff. Let's do the math first, real quick. There are currently over 140 million Russians. Let's say 145 million. That's the official Russian government statistics. 16 million amounts to 11.5%. It means that every 11 people out of 100 are involved into prostitution. Holy moly! I couldn't even suspect the number is so huge. Yeah, something tells me I want to believe this guy is the top federal police official, but I can't believe this. Something doesn't make sense here. The number is too huge. 11 out of 100 people. No. I lived in Russia. I didn't see so much prostitution around me. I got it. Good old member of the Federal Police Council must have counted all officials, public personalities, famous athletes, authors, educators, scientists, etc., all who have sold themselves to Putin's regime for money. That must where 16 million prostitutes come from. Makes all perfect sense now. Okay, I understand. And you know what? It's really hard to disagree with the guy. After all, I think here he knows what he's talking about. Another news is very disturbing, and it comes from none other than Russian enemies, you know. These days, Russia has too many enemies. It's NATO. It's the evil West. It's all those non-traditional values. It's individualism. It's democracy. They are all pushing all those alien values onto Russian people. Like Vladimir Putin said, them bad people want to destroy Russian sovereignty. That's too much pressure on Russians. Too much evil stuff. And now, add one more thing to that. And this is a new thing, and this is a new tool of the evil West. And it's so cunning, and it's so dangerous, and it's so transparent and invisible, you know. It's dangerous, it's stealthy and deadly and all this. It's bad. And it's called fury, and it's infuriating, no pun intended. So what is this thing called fury? I had no clue until yesterday. I just learned about it. But it turns out it's very dangerous for children, and even I fell under its evil spell. Heck, even my parents fell under that spell some 40 years ago. What is that? The fury, or the fury fandom, is a subculture interested in anthropomorphic animal characters. Some examples of these anthropomorphic attributes include exhibiting human intelligence and facial expressions, speaking, walking with two legs, and wearing clothing. The term fury fandom is also used to refer to a community of people who gather on internet and do fury conventions. But that's, you know, that's bad. It's not what it seems, okay? Because Russian officials, they know better. And check this out.
Вот буквально сегодня одно из средств массовой информации попросило меня прокомментировать новое движение,
New movement that affects this kid. This is a very respected lady. She's a commissioner for children of Tatarstan Republic. You might even recognize her from my earliest streams. Yeah, there's people copying animals' behavior, eating from a bowl. Oh my gosh. I mean, those who imitate pigs, they eat from, you know, stuff costs lots of money. Some imitate all this bad stuff. And then some kids make costumes by themselves, you know? And now it has come to Russia. Folks, this is so bad. I mean, no, this is called fury, or in Russian, or fury in English, I guess. So they dress up like animals, these people and children, And they buy costumes, but they also make them from scratch. Oh my gosh. At first I thought it wasn't a big deal, but then I watched this wonderful commissioner who is defending the Russian children. And that stuff that I watched, and you just watched that opened my eyes. I hope it'll open your eyes too. So, this is what's happening in Russia. This is fury, people. And this is danger. Danger in capital letters. And this stuff happens in Moscow. Look at these evil faces. Oh my goodness. Oh. Thank God that this wonderful lady came out and said that, opened our eyes on this danger. By the way, that was the same woman you just saw. She's right here. The very, very same woman who stripped butt naked on Russian national TV in 1998, and it was televised to the entire country. She showed everything, including her breasts, naked breasts, to the camera, to all 140 million Russians in prime time for money prize. And I made a stream about that in the past, and now this woman is children commissioner, and she's a very high moralist in Russia. And she told us everything of the fury. Now you know. Now we all know. But you know what? Knowing is not enough, okay? I gotta confess. I'm ashamed, actually. A confession to make. I dressed Michael as animal. My son, 7-year-old. Well, he was earlier than that. When he was 3, I dressed him as dog. Ryder from Paw Patrol cartoon, those pups from the Adventure Bay. Michael loved watching the cartoon and begged me to dress him as Ryder. Me and Natasha, we bought him the outfit. Yes, I know, it's so wrong. I didn't know back then. We did dress him. Folks, I apologize. I didn't know how evil West manipulation it was, the fury thing, okay? But enough about Michael. I gotta tell you even more. It gets even more dangerous, When I was growing up, I was about 7 or 8. My parents, my dear mom and dad, they were tricked into this fury as well by the evil West, but my parents fell under the fury fandom spell. They dressed me up as Wolf once for New Year's celebration. Yeah, we had those every year, That's pretty much the only celebrations we had in the USSR. So they bought this wolf outfit with a mask of a wolf. I mean, you could see my face right here, but on top there was like a mask. And another time they dressed me up as bear, and there was another costume. And all children around me were also dressed up as animals. Well, like 2 animals. Like there were only wolves and bears around me, and we were all the same. Because those were the only children costumes we could buy at the stores in the USSR. Imagine dozens of the same wolves and the same bears dancing and singing songs in front of a large Christmas tree. Well, the songs that we're singing, were all individual, they're different. But the costumes were absolutely the same. 50 wolves and 50 bears. That was quite a sight. I wish I had a camera back then. That was quite a sight. So, you see how deep Western propaganda runs back into the 80s, into the USSR. If you're Russian, you've got to be so careful these days. This is the big hostile world outside Russia, where everyone wants to harm you and strip you of your precious Russian sovereignty. My goodness. But what if something wrong inside Russia, something broken perhaps, or perhaps someone is informed, someone is misinformed. What about... No. Can't say that. It's not us. It's them, evil, bad Westerners, Satanists. The next news is of fast food. The average, well, by the way, the fast food was brought to us, to Russians, by the evil Satanists from the USA, by McDonald's, and somehow Russians love it. Now McDonald's left, and I think it showed very human face after leaving days after Russia invaded Ukraine. But hey, don't fret, Russians bought the franchise out and copied McDonald's, and now it's called Tasty Period, but it's the same good old McDonald's. Anyway, the news of fast food. The average sale of fast food restaurants increased by 17% in the first quarter of 2024. This allowed Tasty Period, what used to be McDonald's, Teремок, Rostix, what used to be KFC, and other Russian fast food chains to increase revenue by 13%. And the number of sales, well, it has decreased by 3%. Translating into normal language, Russians started paying much higher and fewer people start eating at fast food joints. The source of this information is Russians' Forbes, the Forbes of Russia. The key point here is it's just first 3 months of 2024. Folks, this is how the economic tsunami looks like. Just like that. So much for Russian economy doing great. Wait until the end of the year and see how the sales drop for fast food then, and by how much the prices rise at the end of 24. 17% just in 3 months, huh? How about that? And another economic news. Another hidden tax is introduced in Russia. The government has declared that is rising duties on imported beer. They will increase the duties from 4 to 10 euro cents per each liter sold in Russia. Well, imported into Russia, really. That will add another 10 rubles to price tag of every bottle of imported beer sold in Russia. As usual, the government is trying to cover up this tax hike with saying intentions to support domestic manufacturers, to keep domestic beer cheaper, for domestic manufacturers, brewers, to compete against the imported beer much more effectively. But, we've been there, we've done that, and we've seen that all too well. This is what will happen in the future. Russian brewers will also increase the price because they will be able to do that painlessly. Last year, the country imported around 370 million liters of beer. This means that additional budget revenues that will be used to finance the war with Ukraine will amount to about 22.5 million euros every year. And naturally, Russian consumers will pay more, and they will cover the cost. The next news is actually positive. Not too many positive news come out of Russia these days, but this news, it's actually some Russians can be proud about. And I think that some Russians are actually proud about it. Some are crazy, but hey, judge for yourself. Tesla recently started selling its latest vehicle called Cybertruck. Some people like the design, some people hate it. Of course, same as Tesla came out, the first Tesla. I personally think it's very innovative, and I think it will find its customers. And I heard the reviews about Cybertruck, and they're nice. The vehicle does look unusual. Would I buy it? Big question. But you know what? I really am glad that Elon Musk actually came out with Cybertruck, that he delivered. Well, it turns out that Cybertruck is a copycat of something that was introduced in a galaxy far away a long time ago in the USSR. This is Lada Model 2109. Production started in 1987, and it's as Russian as apple pie. Built by the Italian, the manufacturing plant was built by the Italian company Fiat, and let's forget about that. As Russian as apple pie. I mean, look at that. That's old Cybertruck. Only it's not truck, but you know what? Just color kind of resembles, the form. As Russian as apple pie. Get this, Elon Musk, huh? How you feeling now? The next news comes from the Russian parliament. Remember, not too long ago, I told you that the good fellas at the Kazan parliament, Kazan province parliament, were discussing to lower minimum work age for Russian children to 14 years old. And I was criticized a bit by Russians, and they criticized me from inside Russia, and their point was this. How could you say something like that as these people were just discussing? They were just creating the document. It's not the law in Russia yet. Okay, agree. And a couple times someone told me they're just going to talk about it and forget. Well, guess what? They weren't just talking about it to forget later. Their talk, the good fellows in Kazan parliament, their talk has been continued. But now it has moved up to the federal level, to the Russian parliament in Moscow. By June 1st, a list of recommended professions for teenagers will be created in Russia. And what's teenager age starts in Russia? 14. The list of the professions will include 48 professions. All formalities such as required documents for employment and things like that will be standardized, described, and put on paper, according to Mikhail Kiselev, first deputy chairman of Parliament's Committee on Youth Policy. Folks, they are making the new federal law that will regulate children employment. It started in Kazan as talks, discussions, and so forth, but it has spread to Moscow, and as soon as they make the federal law, it will be the law all over Russia very soon, with a list of professions. You know what the next step will be? Now, for some time, it's going to be voluntarily. Well, the next logical step is the requirement, right? Well, it kind of makes sense. Why would they bother? Unbelievable what Russia has become and how fast it's gotten there. The next news is the truth from Russian official. Oh, don't we all love when officials actually tell the truth? Most often, almost always, it's usually slips of their tongues, but I love it anyway, it's good. The Commissioner for Human Rights in the Sverdlovsk region explained the increase in the conscription age in Russia from 27 to 30 years of age. And she did it in an honest way, which is very unusual. Let me fill you in. Russia has a conscription. When you turn age 18, you will be drafted, you must serve in the Russian armed forces. And the range when the government could actually conscribe you was from 18 to 27, about 10 years. But then they upped from 27 to 30, so they added 3 extra years. And at first they explained it like this. We're going to up the bottom and we're going to up the top. So instead of 18, the young man will be conscribed at the age of 20 or 21, but until age of 30. Because at 18, they're too young, they're too inexperienced, they're like children. Guess what they did? They upped the top, but they did not up the bottom. So now instead of 18 to 27, it's 18 to 30. And a lot of Russians are wondering why. And this wonderful, well, not so wonderful, but Russian official explains in an honest way. Check this out.
Детородный возраст, мы сейчас за повышение демографии.
Сходит в армию, закалится.
This lady right there is the commissioner.
Так тогда какая разница, если он до 27 не сходил, он до 30 решит сходить, успеть или как? Вот просто хочется ваше мнение услышать, почему вот эти плюс 3 года?
Министерство обороны считает, что к 30 годам люди более закаленные, люди более проверенные временем, опытом и жизнью, люди уже родившие детей.
Опа!
Знаете,
And now she tells you, well, us, the truth. They have already had children. They fathered a child or children.
понимаете, ведь сейчас
Nowadays,
секрет, что погибают ребята, у которых не
they die in Ukraine without leaving a child.
остается после себя ребенка. А к 30 годам, если он уходит, он уже
But at 30, they probably already father a child.
родил ребенка. Он
And, you know, if they die after the age of 30 or at 30, they already have a child. So, I don't know. It's not secret that guys are dying now who don't have a child they leave behind, who have not fathered a child yet, but at the age of 30. And if a man is conscripted or, you know, mobilized, he probably, most likely, already leaves a child. He's fathered a child. So Russian men don't get conscripted or mobilized and get killed in Ukraine until they father a child. They father a child first, only then they get conscripted or mobilized. Oh. It's honest truth. That's truth for you, you know. And this just like golden nuggets, tiny, but made out of gold. And I put them together. And this is definitely a large golden nugget. It's on record. It's there on video. And it's unbelievable. That's inhuman. The next crazy news is about eggs. Eggs are back with a bang. We all know that Russia had problems with eggs. It's another controversial topic for me, because I covered this egg problem. Russia ran into two problems, well, many problems, but two of them. First, there was chicken, and then eggs. Well, obviously, first comes chicken, then eggs. Back in September and October, all of a sudden, Russian producers of chicken, farmers, growers, saw an increase in materials that drove the cost of growing chicken up. Therefore, they raised their prices. And then people at the stores, regular Russians, found chicken that was much higher. Well, no wonder. This is a freaking economic tsunami. Russians, get ready for that. You know, you're gonna see that a lot soon. Well, seen already. And a lot of people started complaining. And Vladimir Putin acknowledged the problem. He said, you know, it's government's problem. You know, we didn't look closely enough. And he gave an order to the Minister of Agriculture, Patrushev Jr., to take care of the problem. And he did, in a very effective way. He actually threatened many chicken farmers, producers, growers, that they had to lower the price or else. And guess what they started doing? They started, you know, killing chickens and they put lots of meat on the market. and the prices went down. But guess what happened 2 months later? No chicken, no eggs. Eggs went up. And you heard all about that. I showed you pictures, I showed you videos, and I gave you facts. Now, the problem in Russia in the end of last year, in December, was that the price for eggs skyrocketed. Just to give you an example. When I was leaving Russia in September of 2022, a carton of 10 eggs cost, 80 rubles. Real expensive premium ones cost 100. Well, last December, regular eggs cost around 210, sometimes 220 for 10 regular eggs, and for premium ones even more. Then Russians started looking for cheaper eggs. And the eggs, there was no shortage, but it's just they were very expensive. That's how market regulates. That's called market economy, right? So the price of eggs went up, and poor Russian people who can't afford expensive eggs, they started looking for eggs all over. And once they would find a place where they sold cheaper eggs, Russians would flock there and would form long lines, long queues, long lines. And it appeared like it back in the USSR, and I showed quite a few videos about that. So throughout Russia, there weren't any problems with shortages of eggs, but there were problems, big problems with prices of eggs. Now the prices are up, people have gotten used to them, and they're very expensive, okay? They're in the range of 150 to 180 rubles, which is hugely expensive, okay? But it's getting worse. And I'm gonna make a separate video about or a stream. It's getting worse, okay? And there are objective problems for the crisis in the chicken egg industry, okay? And we'll start seeing the first early birds of egg apocalypse, okay? And, check this out. This is a plane. And look what the carry-on consists of on this plane. And this is far region, northern region of Yakutia. Now, folks, check this out again. Yakutia before never had problems with eggs. Everything is expensive in Yakutia. So, people don't really save money on eggs like they're doing now. It means two things. Either the shortage of eggs in Yakutsk, which is Yakutia's largest city, or the prices even for the locals, and they pay so much more because it's far north, okay, they're so high that they fly to a different region, and as carry-on, they bring eggs, okay? Now, look, one video is better than 1,000 words. I just showed you the video, okay? To me, this video speaks volumes, and these volumes are trouble. Trouble, trouble, trouble. This is what I believe in. I think things are not well. Let me know what you think, because egg is such a sensitive issue in Russia that most likely I will fall under fire. People will be commenting this and so forth. What do you think of this video? What do you think of eggs? I don't think it's normal. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen, I've seen people flying to Yakutsk, but I've never seen them bringing eggs with them. Let me know what you think, please. Moving on. The next news became viral. It was shown on Russian TV, on Russian leading propaganda channel called Россия 1, Russia 1. And let me show you. Why don't you just watch for yourself? Prime time. News, national news. Children with disabilities are taken to see Smersh Squad.
ребят больше всего, расскажет Елена Копылова.
Через глухой лес и несколько
They're taking them
гостям на экскурсию в одну из самых закрытых частей
to a closed military bases in the region, and they're showing them around. And they're showing them the missiles, and they're doing a live shooting show for them, demonstrating military performance, tanks, guns. Smersh, the home base of Smersh. The worst scumbags Soviet Union has ever seen. Smersh. And these people are proud of Smersh. And they're showing it to disabled children. And this is the prime example of indoctrination of children. Realistic, no kidding. Yeah, they were telling children of rifles and guns. Well, I don't have any words either. Yeah, our army is invincible. Do I start laughing here?
И кто-то из них через эти несколько лет сделает выбор в пользу профессиональной карьеры военного.
And this is the prime example of indoctrination of children. And even worse, these children are the most vulnerable children, the disabled children. I know, I worked with disabled children. I used to be a volunteer ski instructor taking disabled children on rides back in Maine. I had to take courses on different disabilities, including Down syndrome, including all kinds of stuff. I know a thing or two about disabled children. And Russians are indoctrinating children and brag about this indoctrination on Russian national TV. And the host is saying that in a few years, some of the children might choose a career in the military. No, those children will not choose a career in the military, in the Russian army, in a few years, because they're disabled. Do you even understand what you talk about as the host of this TV news? You just read the words, or you actually think about them? Oh, by the way, I was making today's crazy Friday news update. This is still Friday news update, although it's Sunday. I usually present on Fridays. Just couldn't do that Friday. So I had to select a few news out of about 45 news or so. There's just so many of them. If you want to get more news like this every single day, 9 news every day to be exact, with my commentaries and analysis, you can become Inside Russia patron at patreon.com. You will get access to all the news, such as price increases, firings and hirings in the Russian government, economy news, just about anything. So you will stay informed, and you really will understand much more what's currently happening in Russia. So 9 more news every day, every single day. The link to sign up is down below. Check it out. The next news is heroic. 2 confessions in one video live stream is actually, a lot. I must apologize again. At first, I confessed that I dressed Michael as dog rider out of Paw Patrol, little costume. And now I'm confessing I'm too hard on some people. I bash Putin's elites. I shed truth upon them, okay? I bring truth, and at least I think so. So this elites, the vertical of power, the authorities, the officials, well, I gotta take a look at them at a little different angle today. Perhaps they're more human than I have thought of them. Perhaps they actually sacrifice things. As far as Russians know, living inside Russia is great. It's the best country in the world. It's the beacon of light for the entire world. It's the home of Russian world values, the traditional values and so forth. Russia is led by the guy who is pro-values, pro-family values, although he doesn't have family himself. He's destroyed his family, he divorced his wife, but he's pro-families, okay? But living in the West is suffering. I mean, every Russian who supports the war, every Z-patriot knows that. The West is full of warmongers, Satanists, people with low morals, drug addicts, homeless. The West is consumed by the wave of poverty, exploitation of the poor, and there are so many sick people as the costs of healthcare are astronomical, and people simply cannot afford medical care anymore. They just die in the streets. People in the West are suffering. That's what you get when you turn on Russian TV. Well, I'm being a little sarcastic here, but I'm not too far off, okay? That's what Russians are given in 2024. Let's take a closer look at the elites and their families. For example, the son of the mayor of Orsk, that city that was flooded recently, is suffering in Dubai. Dmitry Peskov's daughter, Dmitry Peskov is Putin's press secretary, she's suffering in Paris, France. Former head of Russian railway company, RZD, the state-owned company, Mr. Yakunin is suffering in Germany. Yakunin's son is suffering in London, Great Britain. Former head of the Ministry of Agriculture, Yelena Skrinik, is suffering in Switzerland. Putin's ex-wife is suffering in her mansion in Côte d'Azur in the south of France. One of her mansions was recently confiscated, and that's real suffering, She must have had like 5 left, perhaps 4. Former Deputy Prime Minister Ilya Klibanov is suffering in Israel. Igor Shuvalov's family, and he's a former first deputy prime minister and Putin's one of the closest friends. His family is barely surviving in London, the UK. Sometimes it gets so bad and so hard in London for them that they fly and live in their villa in Dubai. So they go back and forth. They suffer there and they suffer there. The children of former senator and an avid attacker of the evil West and everything Western, Sergei Zheleznyak, suffered such terrible hardships in the Great Britain that Zheleznyak himself could not stand it being away from his children, and he also went to live in Great Britain with them to share the hardships. Russia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov's daughter, is suffering in New York, in the USA. She's a US citizen by birth, by the way. And the list can go on. I think you get the idea. So what can we learn from this? It is very clear. Vladimir Putin's elites selflessly, by own example, are showing Russian citizens that life in the evil West is not honey and flowers at all. It is hard there, and it's much suffering. And this is what they're doing, the suffering for all Russian people. And the Russians, they should be grateful to Putin elites. That Russians, unlike the elites, they live in the prosperous superpower in a very rich, nice country, Russia. Before I jump to Stalin's spirit news, yes, believe it or not, Stalin is back. I'd like to thank everyone for supporting the channel, buying me coffees at buymecoffee.com. When you buy me a coffee, it is the proof that you find my work valuable. And to me, it's a huge feedback and inspiration. So again, thank you so very much. And the next news smells like coffee. Well, not really. Smells like Russian Easter. Happy Easter, everyone. Today's Russian Easter, Orthodox, religion, Orthodox Church Easter. So let's have good morals, high values, real Christian news from Russia. It's no more, no less. The invocation of the spirit of Joseph Stalin is going to be happening at Barnaul's Stalin's Center. Barnaul is a Russian city not too far from China in the far east, southeast. Okay, so the spiritism, is that the word? The spiritism. Spiritualism, there you go. The spiritualism session will be held as a part of the Night of the Museums campaign, according to Sergei Matasov, chairman of the Council of the Stalin Center and the deputy of the local legislative assembly. So this spiritualism session, the spiritual session will be held on the night from 18th to 19th of May. I quote, "We are planning to make a reconstruction of a spiritual session based on Mikhail Afanasievich Bulgakov's story." Bulgakov is a Russian world's famous writer, just in the style of the 30s of the Stalin era. In that entourage and in that style, we want to hold a spiritualism session. Bulgakov wrote a story called The Session. We will use the story to reconstruct the session to resurrect the spirit of Joseph Stalin. It'll be quite a performance, I unquote. The session will last for about an hour and a half, and an advance reservation is required as only 25 people are allowed. First of all, I didn't even know that there's a Stalin Center in the city of Barnaul. That's crazy. That's crazy news right there. Russia's worst scumbag, the bloodiest killer in the country's history, perhaps one of the bloodiest killers in the history of the world, human civilization. That's what Stalin is, in this Stalin Center. Most likely, it is financed by Russian taxpayers. I'm not sure, I don't claim that, but kind of makes sense. What would my grandfather's family say? We have many relatives shot to death by Stalin's order. I wonder if they liked this idea that there's a Stalin's center kind of museum and they're going to try to resurrect his spirit. Then, do you see anything wrong with the deputy of a local Barnaul parliament, an official person, a member of the vertical of power, organizing spiritualism session with Ouija board to bring the spirit of Joe Stalin back to this world? I wonder if Russian Eastern Orthodox Church knows of that and approves. But you know what? Something tells me that I would not be surprised. Very Easter-like news for you, and for me too. My question is, where do real Satanists live? The Russian government calls the West, the USA, Canada, European countries, Australia, the evil satanic West. But perhaps, just perhaps, they're looking at the wrong direction. I suggest they take a closer look at Barnaul, at Joseph Stalin's Center, and of its vicinities. Perhaps they will find a Satanist or two, or a dozen, or 100 there. Huh? How about that for a suggestion? Okay, before I move to the last news, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please let me know what you think of this news selection. Do you like them? Perhaps something that you didn't like? Perhaps you liked some news more than others? Please let me know in the comments down below. This is hugely important because it shows me what direction I should move in the next news update next Friday that is coming up. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And the last news of the day, but not least, comes from Russia's parliament. The Senator Zhuravlev, good Senator Zhuravlev, was outraged that life has become the main value for young Russians. Check this out.
А если завтра большая война, если завтра в поход?
What if there's a big war tomorrow?
У нас
Who's
поколение
going to
30
war?
лет
Go to war?
воспитывалось, что? Да не, так сказать. У нас
No.
главное что? Ценность какая?
What's the
Какая
biggest
главная
value?
ценность? Жизнь главная ценность.
Life.
Знаете, меня с детства воспитывали, я не знаю.
That's
Я
how I
сначала
was raised.
страна,
My country
потом мои
comes
родные,
first,
близкие,
family, loved ones,
потом мои
my own
ценности какие-то, а
values,
потом только своя жизнь.
and life number 4. Life is the value number 4. And it's somewhere there, far away, you know. What's the biggest value? Country, of course. So he says, what if there's a big war tomorrow? What if we go to war tomorrow? Who will fight in that war? Our generation has been brought up for the 30 last years with what their main value. Life is their main value. Life. And he's outraged. And then he explains that to him life is his generation and that life shouldn't be the biggest value. And then he tells how he was raised. If you're watching this sitting in the West somewhere, you know, most likely to you the words of the Russian senator, they come as a shock. He renders Russian lives worthless. Human life is number one, and he's outraged by that. He doesn't like that. Do you know why? Before I answer this, let's take a look at the good Senator Zhuravlev. Let's microscope him. Who is this guy? Born in 1962, the senator had a pretty successful political career in the USSR. He joined the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1984. And by the time the USSR fell apart in 1991, he was the second comrade secretary of Voronezh Komsomol City Committee. And simultaneously, he was the head of the economic department of Voronezh Regional Komsomol Committee. Basically, he was the person number 5 in the communist political hierarchy of the 1 million people city of Voronezh. And that is at the age of 29. A very talented politician. He was a part of nomenclatura. The good life was provided by the Communist Party. By the age of 29, he had a car, personal car with a driver. He had a nice apartment, probably had dacha, had spetspayok, free food of any kind, free clothing, and so forth. He was high up in the hierarchy. No wonder the crash of the USSR came as shock to the good senator. Losing good life and a communist career most likely was a shock to him. I think that would be a shock to anyone in power. The good senator was not sad for very long. Remember, he's very talented. Soon, he joined the local government of the new country, Russia, then created his own political party, then joined Putin's party called the United Russia. The party line. To make the long story short, the good Senator Zhuravlev has been in the Russian parliament. He has been a senator of the lower chamber since 2011 for 13 years. He has supported the annexation of Crimea, he has supported the invasion of Ukraine, and he has been placed under personal sanctions by many countries of the free world. Talented Mr. Ripley. And this guy dares to make public statement that he's outraged by that Russian youth values their lives the most. He's outraged by that. How dare they? Life is their value number one? It must be the motherland, obviously. Then the other people, you know, perhaps the politicians, Putin, the government, then the Russian values, whatever they are. And only then, number 4, comes life. So I take it comes shocking to you. Because for you, your life is the biggest value. And this is normal, and this is right. Matthew 22:39. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. We should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. So it must follow that we cannot love others if we do not love ourselves first. We should value others' lives as we value our lives. And if we value our lives the most, as the Russian youth, according to the not-so-good senator, we will also value lives of others the most. And we will value the lives of Ukrainians too. And when we are ordered to go and kill Ukrainians, we will not comply because to us life is value number one. It cannot be taken from anyone. And then we will start asking, wait a second, what are you doing to Ukraine? Why are you sending us? Why are you killing those people? Life is number one. How dare you to take their lives? And the not-so-good Senator Zhuravlyov and the Orkish gang don't like that. Through his words, I see old Soviet ugly ideology rising, seeping through. You are nothing. Your life is worthless. Your duty is to die for your country without thinking, if that's required. Required by who? I personally am not shocked. I grew up in this paradigm and I find it very, very ugly. It's not worth living like that. Been there, done that, and hated it. Thank you. But it looks like it's the foundation of the new Russia, the Russian world, what Putin has built, okay? Life is not the biggest value. It's your state, it's your country, it's your government. That's what your biggest value is. You know what? That ideology might work for some short time, but it's unsustainable. That ideology is wrong and criminal. Life is value number one. Matthew 22:39. We at Tashkent Breakfast Club got together this morning to celebrate Easter. And we discussed again, we discuss it all the time actually, where anyone would like to go and whether anyone would like ever go back to Russia. Let's suppose war is over, Putin's gone, you know, the regime is changed. Guess what? Not so many of us want to go back. How can we go back and live alongside people who tell us that our lives are worthless and don't matter? The Soviet communist, the member of the Communist Party of the USSR, changed his color in 1991 and embraced democracy, according to him. 20 years later, he painted his colors back into red. And now he is back to his Soviet rhetoric. And when Russia will change again, he will then turn around and become so-called Democrat again. He will change his colors. And then he will be telling us that, you know, oh, life is perhaps number one. So that's going to be his change number 3. And it's not just one senator. Along with him, millions and millions of other Russians are like that. They have, you know why? They have 2 values, and 2 values only, power and money. And they'll do anything to achieve and to keep power and money. Imagine living among people like that. Thank you, but no thank you. It's pretty sad. That's it for the news update today. If you want to see how we Russians live after leaving Russia for good, check out another video I made documenting our life in Uzbekistan. The link is right here. Thank you so much.